Welcome, everybody, to Synthsilk Failure, a podcast about watching Marathon die. Thank you so much for joining us, whether you're on Earth, Tau Ceti 4, or otherwise. We appreciate you joining us for our second ever episode. I am T. Monny, and I am joined today by my co-host.
I'm Robomantis, and T-Money, I have hilarious bit written in our agenda here, but
Yeah,
I
I'm
think in
excited. Yeah.
true marathon fashion, we're just a little behind on the content that people want to see. So stay tuned for maybe a couple weeks down the line when we have our mid-season update and we're able to release some very, very hilarious bits to intro this show for you.
Yeah, seeing a lot
Uh,
of chatter in the Discord about eagerness for the hilarious bit. So,
yeah, people are
look
really
on the
begging
patch
for it.
notes, future patch notes for that.
The format of the show, for those of you who are just joining us, we're doing our little intro here, where we're just kind of welcoming you to the show. Then we're actually going to take a what we're calling a running break. So we're going to go down to Tau Ceti 4, do some runs, actually play the game for a little bit, and then we're going to come back and dive into the main show. So we're going to be talking about various different topics here, highlighting anything cool that might have happened during the running break or some of our favorite runs of the week. And then our main topic this week is going to be sort of a season two check-in, just sort of comparing where things were at the start of season one versus where they are season two, what our goals are for season two, things like that. As always, we will do a check-in on the state of marathon, as this is a show about appreciating marathon while it lasts and tracking its death.
And even though we're not industry experts, it's really hard to talk about marathon and it dying without the broader context, of what's happening in the games industry. And I think like within maybe an hour or two of actually when we dropped Silk Failure episode 1, there were some pretty massive Microsoft layoffs announced, in addition to the layoffs that had already hit Bungie. So we'll talk about that just a little bit as well after the break.
Yeah, so with that, we are going to go infill planet side, and we will see you all after the break.
Let's go.
All right, and welcome back, runners. We hope you all had a good running break. We certainly did. Had a couple contracts we completed for Mida. Always happy to bring a little more chaos into the world. So we're jumping back into our main show now, and as always, we're going to start off with sort of a state of marathon. And there's no better place to start than the user numbers. This is always an important topic for everyone. As I look on SteamDB right now, we're at about 4,600 players. I listened to something from Paul Tassi earlier this week. He basically said, while we don't know the console numbers, the sort of industry rule of thumb is it's about half of what the Steam numbers are. So we're probably looking at under 10,000 users right now, maybe, 8,600, something like that. Or
Paul Tassi, by the way, MVP, come on our show, be our honored guest, please. But I didn't read or listen to whatever specific thing you're referring to. But in the past, like he sounds like he's got some Bungie insiders, or maybe now formerly Bungie insiders.
Yeah.
I think many have been laid off. And he talked about that they don't really, or by they I don't really know whether I mean Bungie or Sony or whatever, but have kind of. I mean, I think he used the phrase like written off console. Like this game, I think maybe the ratio is even more skewed toward the PC side, just kind of anecdotally based on that.
Yeah, I could certainly believe that. Regardless of the case, the user numbers are not good,
That's like 2,000
again,
fewer than last week when we recorded.
Right, correct. So it's already dropped down from some already very, very bad numbers. I think Marathon is in a place where if it's not going to die, it needs to, fivefold, tenfold 20-fold start increasing the user numbers. And so seeing the slow decline, which is, a normal part of a season in any
Right.
extraction shooter, that first couple weeks right after the wipe when everybody's fresh is usually the time when people jump in the most. There's a little bit of new content that people are excited to try, and then it slowly falls off over the course of the season. So that's to be expected. But again, with where things are with Marathon, in order for it to be brought back to life, the numbers need to get a lot better, not steadily a little bit worse. And so that's sort of where we're at. I imagine next week the numbers will be about the same or a little worse as well. I wanted to talk a little bit about our weekly patch here. So not a ton. I know they fixed an issue with lockdown events and a couple things like that. Nothing too big. The one thing I will say is that when they released the patch, there were some pretty big issues around like solo queues, and I think the sponsored queues as well were just like completely broken for the first like 6 hours. Bungie, of course we're going to be leveling criticism at Bungie throughout our time here, but Bungie has always been incredibly responsive in terms of patches, listening to user feedback and stuff like that. And while, the release I don't think went as well as they would have hoped, I'll always commend them for, getting those fixes out very, very quickly when there's serious issues like that.
Yeah, it was funny. I almost messaged you like, wow, the game actually seems like it must be in a really stable place because these patch notes are pretty small. Like, usually I would expect, this game's still only a handful of months old. Like, I would expect there to still be a bunch of like, hey, we're looking at this and we're looking at, kind of like an over prevalence of this kind of weapon or this kind of gear or this kind of ammo economy or whatever. And I was like, wow, they really, like there's a lot of kind of gears that make up this game, the swish watch of the mechanics. And like, I was like, wow, this seemed like it seems like they've got it kind of dialed in this season, right? Like they're not really having to constantly tweak like stuff like shotgun damage and stuff that it did sort of feel like was happening in the first season, and that happened a lot with Destiny and became a little bit exhausting. And I was like, wow, good for them. They really got it straightened out. And then a couple hours later, there's a message like, oh yeah, solo queues and rook queues are both completely broken and we're working on it. So it's been a weird, like, almost like different set of problems than I would expect, where it's not like the servers are crashing. It's not like there's this huge outcry about game balance, but it's just like components of the game stop working for like hours at a time, and I don't know how that's going to affect their ability to gain new players. But the season 2, free weekend, or would that turn into a week or whatever? I forget what it was. They extended it a little
I think
bit.
10 days.
That's rough, like if they do something like Vault Breaker, like a PvE experience, and they market that and try and get word of mouth going as a way to bring people in, and then people are, it only takes one run in this game where you get disconnected and you lose the gear you had been building up through the run, especially if you're early on, right, to really turn you off from it. So I hope they can smooth that kind of stuff out as they go forward and have another, I don't know, if they have an event to add on players, or even just the beginning of season 3. It's nice to see the balance feels smooth, but like I don't think they can afford to keep having, experiences where players log in and can't play the game.
Right. Yeah, and I think there's sort of a double-edged sword with a relatively small series of patch notes. Obviously, we're not expecting like a big release this week. Vault Breakers is something that's coming through mid-season, which I think will be really big. But it's sort of a thing of like, well, is it a small patch because they just don't have a lot of stuff that they actually want to tweak, or is it a small patch because they don't actually have the staff and the manpower to be as ambitious as they might be. I think there's always going to be this sort of give and take of, how big can they reach with a patch to add a bunch of stuff. And you're right. I think season 1 was changing stuff like every week seemed to change, a ton. Whereas this one, it was certainly a less ambitious patch. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. That sort of leads us into our other special topic that we wanted to talk about in terms of the state of Marathon. We're not industry insiders. We don't really know a ton about the games industry and things like that.
I read a lot of Paul Tassi,
Yeah. So we're basically pros. But, I do think it's important to acknowledge, even if we can't bring the most in-depth insight into this, if we're talking about a show where we're watching Marathon die, I think it's impossible to not talk about the Microsoft layoffs that happened this week as well. So, Ty, I don't know if you had some thoughts you wanted to share on that.
Yeah, and again, this is all just coming from the perspective of somebody who, I've got couple of friends who work or have worked in the industry, but by no means consider myself a guru or anything like that. But this is certainly not a topic that others online shy away from having hot takes about. So I figured we might as well take a minute to discuss it here. But without having the details in front of me, and they are always a little bit vague about these kind of offerings. But basically, as part of, I think it's fair to frame all this stuff as part of a real, reckoning, restructuring, I don't know, something happening. Some have called it a dissolution of the whole games industry. But basically, we had Microsoft this week hit with pretty huge layoffs, both of their Xbox team, and then also either shutting down, spinning off, by which I mean selling, or one of them I guess is unknown. I think is Arcane is kind of an unknown status maybe, but some of their game studios that they had bought up in a buying spree, and I want to say it was 2018, 2019. And this was a time when, even as a Microsoft fan, I was sort of alarmed by how many different properties Microsoft was buying up. Right. And the promise, of course, from Microsoft and from Xbox is that this gives them access to greater resources, greater flexibility. They kind of a close partnership with the maker of the console and gaming platform. Kind of has obvious benefits, and that it would kind of shield them financially by putting them under this big, corporate umbrella. A lot of folks at the time and in the intervening time since then have said that's probably not the case. This is clearly just a move to, make balance sheets looks good and benefit shareholders and things like that. And I think a lot of that was pretty much validated this week by a lot of this news. And what I heard is that the layoffs would have been even worse if not for an ongoing buyout program that Microsoft has been doing with a lot of their senior staff to try and encourage them to, exit the company voluntarily with additional financial support or whatever, some kind of severance thing. So this is part of a very, very serious reckoning reduction in the workforce at Microsoft. And so, like you said, the patch, it could be that they're feeling really good about balance, or it could be that, after it was just a couple weeks ago that Bungie suffered, pretty much this exact fate, being pretty much everyone who was working on Destiny and only Destiny is basically gone, is my understanding, as well as maybe even some of the folks who were working on Marathon. And from what they were saying online, it sounds like they're not going to touch Destiny again except for basically routine maintenance. And he said, the community manager said, only serious issues, i.e. if the game is crashing. So that means they are not going to patch things quote unquote broken armor or weapon sets that do ridiculous amounts of damage or can be exploited in various ways. And so I think you can expect, there's going to be a loyal crew of people playing Destiny, but I think you can expect a deterioration in the quality of that game, even if you do sign on, as people figure out what to exploit and just start messing around with that kind of stuff. And obviously, as the population dwindles and there's no new content and everything. So,
Yeah, and it is kind of crazy to me to think back on sort of this arms race. Obviously, like Microsoft was, I think, way, way, way more guilty of this sort of approach of trying to buy up all these other studios and IP and stuff like that. But it's very clear to me that when Sony bought Bungie, which was less than 5 years ago, by the way, which is, insane to me, that it was part of this sort of broader trend in the industry of these, console manufacturers or these big corporations just trying to buy up as much IP as possible, again in this sort of arms race. And it's crazy to think even if we go back, Microsoft did get a head start, but this was less than 10 years ago from when this was a huge push in the industry where Microsoft was investing so much money and so many resources into this to basically a total collapse across the entire industry. I think if I have something to add, it would be that I think it's really hard to not fall into the trap of like trying to blame somebody for this. And certainly I don't think that any of these acquisitions were like smart business decisions. Clearly they're not working out, but I think like it almost feels like it's this force that you have no control over whatsoever. Like the industry is just sort of like, imploding in on itself, and, good studios, good games are just like routinely getting destroyed. Destiny, as much as we had fallen off of it, like didn't deserve to go out the way that it went out. Marathon probably should have had something to make it, more appealing to people, or, probably should be given a longer runway than it's likely to be given, and it's hard to not try to, in that chaos, in that feeling of like, I have no control over this, to not try to, single out like a, particular studio or particular executive or particular game, when the reality is like, the industry just seems like it's kind of consuming itself at this point in time. And, it sucks for gamers. It obviously sucks for all of the, workers who have, put all their time into, creating these like great pieces of art. And unfortunately, like, I don't think this is going to stop soon. Like, I think we're unfortunately going to continue to see a lot more of this.
Yeah, I think this is something like that I hope we can bring up in the future, especially with guests that we're going to have on the show. And I'd be excited to get some of their takes, thinking in particular of Stubby Stan, who we hope to have on in the near future. But I think for me, it's just like, I'm thinking about what you're saying about the blame thing. And it's just really hard when like artistic, type of products, like a video game or movie or whatever, come into collision with the financial realities of an industry. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that can be extremely productive, right? Like Halo. The first Halo is a game that famously had like a really weird history and kind of like switched genres and platforms, right, and like kind of seemed to be in production hell for a long time. And it's like becoming the flagship game for this new console and new generation of consoles. Like probably cramped a lot of people's style who were making the game, right? And a lot of people had to throw out a lot of, like, there was really cool stuff in those like early demos, right, that just never saw the light of day. And that probably was like painful for people, but it ultimately spawned like, I mean, it's kind of hard to overstate, the influence of that game. And then like when you think about like, I think like Hollywood for the past, maybe not counting the last few, but for decades, right, is a great example of where like you have kind of do have these great examples of where like creative vision has met the reality and the constraints of technology and funding and things like that, and produced like really cool products, right? But then there's another side to that cycle where things get a little oversaturated, and I think like there's this vision in gaming of like Expedition 33 got a lot of this, where it was like, oh, this is just like a small independent studio, and it was just a few people like fulfilling their vision. And it's like, dude, if you look at the credits screen of that game, I mean, like
a ton of people worked on it.
A ton of people worked on it, and they're subcontracting stuff out. Like no AAA game for like these days is getting made by an individual person or a handful of people. And there are great indie games
Right.
out there that are made by solo devs and small teams and stuff for sure. And some of those can be great experiences too. But to me, it's like, I don't want to make this sound like I'm glad people got laid off. And I don't mean to make this sound like there's not an imbalance between like the amount of money these corporations are making on a quarterly basis and some of their executives are making, and then like what their average employees are making. But I
Right.
do at the same time think you use the phrase like deserve, like, right? Like how a game deserves to go out. And I think there's an interesting thing right now where people feel like if a game is good and enjoyable to play, then everyone who worked on it deserves to be employed like for the foreseeable future. And
Yeah.
I think that's
And
a
that the
really nice
gamers get
idea.
to Yeah, and that the players can continue to play it. I think that's what we're bumping up with Marathon. That maybe the point of this show is to grapple with is like, hey, like this game is cool. Like this is a really really good game. It's dying. Like it will be killed. It's just a matter of when. And to a certain degree, the changes that it would need to make at this point in time to become sustainable, it would almost become a different game. Like it might not be the same game that the 10,000 people who are playing it actually enjoy.
Yeah, it's not mathing up that like we paid $40 for this and how many hours we've played it, and yeah. But like to me, I don't know. I guess again, without veering into territory where I'm like kind of not knowledgeable enough to be accidentally like offensive. I think this strikes me as much more of like a capitalism kind of issue in a lot of ways, right? And just a market cycle issue. And it's like if we could kind of address the disparity between what a CEO and an average employee at a corporation makes, and address organized labor and union busting and things like that, then I don't know. To me, that feels like a more productive avenue to think about some of these issues versus like I liked this game and therefore like it is a travesty that the studio that made it is no longer financially viable. I'm not sure that those two things add up as a cause and effect in my head.
Yeah, and I think, in like a perfect scenario, right? Maybe we do see as these enormous companies start to collapse in on themselves a little bit and they fire all these incredibly talented people, maybe we can see a little bit of a shift in the market where there are, maybe not, AAA games, but a rung below that being made by these, new and independent studios. I would certainly hope that we might be able to see something like that in the future where there are, a game that's, a little bit smaller, not quite indie, but also not quite AAA, where, maybe there can be some success. But yeah, ultimately, I think, we're seeing industries consolidate across the board, whether it's, healthcare or banking or, entertainment. And yeah, it doesn't really seem like it's an attainable solution in terms of like creating the stuff that people want and letting it survive.
Yeah, something's got to change, and it is in the process of changing. By way of wrapping up this topic, I just want to mention we have an awesome screenshot that we took when Destiny 1 was winding down, of like kind of our regular fire team, which is you, me, and my wife. And I look back on that a lot with a lot of fondness. And then also thinking about how they're re-releasing like Halo. They're doing campaign evolved. So the Halo 1 campaign, cross-platform multiplayer, or cross-platform co-op, I should say. And I don't want to get into it now, but I think I would love to have a conversation in the future about like what it means for a game to end, and kind of the way that turns it into a memory or kind of like, locks it away in a certain time, and sort of like how people take that, kind of the difference between like preservation and like sort of like letting your memory be, I guess. I don't know. We'll get into it in a future time, but I'm really interested in this idea of like that gamers often feel like something should kind of be available to play indefinitely. And I think that can be a little bit of a double-edged thing. But
Yeah.
anyway, we are definitely thinking about, and I do just want to clarify, it does suck for these people to lose their job. I think Microsoft, it was pretty fair to say it was a little disingenuous to advertise some of these games, say that they were going to be day one Game Pass releases at their showcase just a few weeks ago, as they were clearly in the background, laying the groundwork or probably finishing the paperwork to like spin off or close those very studios. So I don't want to make it sound like I have a ton of sympathy for Microsoft as a corporation and that we should feel more empathy for them than for the employees who are now going to have to figure out something else to do for their livelihood. I just kind of, I chafe against some of the hot takes, the very knowing takes online sometimes that are a little self-righteous, I guess. So.
Yeah, I think, if we can bring something to this space, I don't think it's industry expertise or a understanding of the business. It is just some guys who like talking about Marathon, including some of our good runs of the week. So with that smooth transition, we want to move on to our next segment here and talk a little bit about some stuff we encountered over the last week here. So, T-Money, I know we had a really good one, I think, on Friday where we were able to take advantage of some of the proximity chat in Perimeter to some very, very good, hilarious results.
Yeah, we dropped into Perimeter. I think we were doing duos. I don't remember what I feel like we were sort of aimless as far as contract. Like we just needed to kill robots or something like that. We didn't have a specific place to go.
I think we were hoping that maybe the Warden would pop in and we'd do a little Warden run, but we were on free kits, so not even really prepared for that.
For me, like downing a Warden and getting the key and then going and trying to use that key in like the same or a future run is one of the most simple and fun loops in the game. So yeah, anyway, we saw the little Warden cordon tape and we heard some gunfire in the area and we thought that maybe, we did not see the Warden cordon tape.
Right.
It's actually critical to the story. But we were coming down on Overflow, right? And we heard some gunfire. And we started to approach the area, check it out. I was like, I'm going to activate this TAD, right?
Yeah. It was very clear. I think we even heard the secured resources box. It was very clear that there were some runners there, and they were fighting some, fairly intense UESC that come in when you do a secured resource box.
Yeah. So you popped on the proximity chat, I think, right? How did you first approach them?
You popped the TAD, and around that time, they finished killing all of the UESC. So there were only 2 icons that popped on the TAD, and they both had blue shields.
Right, that's right.
Again, we're on free kits. The odds of us being able to take this fight were pretty limited. And then the TAD releases this big blue wave that's pretty visible by everyone.
So, everyone knows everyone is there.
So we see the blue icons freeze when the tag goes on, and they're very clearly like, oh, there's runners here.
Like, let's get ready to rumble, yeah.
Yeah, like, ready to take us out. And I just turn on Prox chat and say, hey, guys, we're free kits. We don't think we're going to be able to fight you, so, we're not trying to fight you.
And these guys are, like, the chillest. Like, after a long pause, he's like, that's cool.
Yeah, he offered me a green shield, so I went up and they had
come on up here,
green
get this
shield.
green shield out of this box. Just super chill. Like, it's always funny to me in a game that everyone describes as ultra hardcore how often you do run upon people, and then like as soon as you talk to them, they act like you're not even there. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
They act like you're just like another person at the coffee shop, being like, "Oh, do you mind if I reach over and like grab the cream?" They're just like, "Oh, yeah, sure, do whatever you want." And it's like, we could be killing each other, but I'm glad we're not.
Yeah, and I think there's always like an attitude of like, oh, somebody gets killed with gray shields. Like, yeah, like you're gonna get the heals from them. Maybe you'll get a little bit of ammo, but it's also like it's not even really worth it to them to a certain point. Yeah. So we go up, we're chatting, we're hanging around, yeah, and just like super chill, almost to the point of like not even responding on things. And I'm like, hey, if the warden, hey, you guys want to go fight the warden? And they're like, yeah, okay, let's get ready. And then we all realize like, oh, the warden's actually not.
It's not
here,
even on the
which
map.
probably should have been clear to us. So we're like, okay.
We just got excited. It's okay.
After a few minutes, we'll split up and we'll just see you. Hey, if the warden pops up on the map, we'll meet you there and we'll all take it out together. We go our separate ways, and I think head over towards South Relay and then to Station. I think we
Yeah,
make a
yeah.
little
They
bit
were
of
like,
a loop.
and they were like, cool. Yeah, if we see the warden, we'll meet you there. Just talk. Like, just go on the mic, and we'll,
Right.
we'll find each other. We're like, cool. And then headed up to Station eventually.
So we make our way to Station, just doing a little looting, fighting a few bots, and then we're sort of towards one of these outbuildings on the in between South Relay and Station, and we start hearing fire, and we're like, oh, there's runners here, and they sound like they're pretty close, like maybe they're shooting the the bots. So it had been a few minutes. We're thinking maybe we might have gotten separated and then, reconnected with these guys in a little bit. So I go on the prox chat and I'm like, hey, are you guys our blue friends from before?
And
Nothing.
pretty much at that point, no, it wasn't nothing. It was bullets started entering the back of my runner shell's head at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. So they start going hard at us. It turns into a fight. And again, I think one had a blue shield, one had a green shield. So they were probably better kitted than us for sure. But it was a decent fight. And I have to say, those little outbuildings on Station where you kind of have your ladders going down to the lower level, you've got the catwalk going to other buildings. For mobile players, you can really quickly get up onto the roofs and stuff like that.
And the exfil is right there. Like, there's an exfil that appears right down there below it, like next to the drone bays. So it's a good spot to a lot of stuff happens there.
Yeah, and that exfil had appeared there. So
yeah,
it's a really good spot to have some good fights. It was a very fun fight. I think T-Money, you got one of them down, and then his partner took care of you. And then I tried to get the partner. I think he was the blue shield, and we both ended up down.
It's funny how different our experiences of the fight itself are, because it was not fun at all for me. I was like, "Are you guys friends?" And then they shot me to death, and I was like, "Oh, I guess you guys aren't my friends."
Yeah, I had fun. So we're both down. One of us gets on the mic and says, "Hey, we were just trying to be your friend." And that seemed to really strike a chord with them. That seemed to really, really affect one of them. And he almost started panicking a little bit.
I would say he was frantic.
Yeah. So he's like, oh, do you guys have a mercy kit? Here's a mercy kit. Or if you have a self-revive, you can self-revive. And we're like, no, we're on free kits. We don't have any of that stuff. We're just
we're like, it's cool, dude. We thought you were our friend. You're not. That's how, it's all good. But he was it was like a kid who had accidentally driven his car and run over your mailbox or something like that, and was trying to figure out how to make it better, And eventually he was like, can you make it to the exfil? And I'm like, well, I'm about to die, But I think you had a lot of time left, and you had the drone, or whatever.
I had a triage drone keeping me alive. Yeah.
So you guys we all started making your way, but I died halfway there to the exfil, and this guy's like, "Hold on, buddy, hold on," and he activates the exfil, and he's like, "Are you guys gonna make it?" And you're like, well, I think I am, but my buddy, and I expire at that moment, and
instantly.
They're then at that moment, two things start happening. They start expressing only one guy was on the mic, but he starts expressing extreme remorse, and then also him and his buddy just take everything out of my bag, within 2 seconds,
while they're being like, oh man, if you only had a self revive, or if we had a mercy kit. Well, they're just picking your bones clean from every last little bit. I do end up making it out of the exfil, and I think I think my quest had something to do with exfilling, or like I brought like you had a exfil weapons quest, and
Right.
I had picked up a couple guns for you, so we were actually able to make a little bit of progress on your quest,
On
but
my contract. Yeah.
yeah, on your contract, but otherwise, it was just a total cluster, and yeah, one of those things that I think can only happen in marathon.
Yeah, another like related super quick story was that time that we got downed by playing duos, and we got them to just straight up start apologizing to us, and they were like, "Yeah, sorry," because we were doing a contested contract, and I was like.
Yeah,
Trying to be like, hey, just that we were both down already, but I was like, oh, are you guys doing the contested thing? Like, it's on my body, whatever, GG. And they're like, no, we just wanted to kill you. And then
we just
I'm
had
like,
to
oh,
kill
that's
you.
cool. Like, I appreciate the honesty, but they're like, yeah, sorry. And it's just, I mean, it just never ceases to crack me up. Like, you see like, it reminds me of like just driving, like cars on the road. Like, you see every car, and it's just like this faceless, expressionless person that you are like ascribing your own motivations to, right? But then, like, a lot of times when you look inside and you can like see the driver, like, sure, like sometimes it's an asshole just like driving aggressively, but like a lot of times it's
Right.
just like scared person that like didn't mean to turn the wrong way down this one-way street, and it's like
Yeah.
actually internally panicking, or whatever. And it's just so funny to me. I think there's tons of people playing the game who like just don't experience that side of it ever, who
Yeah.
just treat the PvP as straight up PvP, and I'm sure they're higher level than me, but I feel like they're missing out.
Yeah, I completely agree. I had a solo run that I wanted to talk about a little bit too. So once again on Perimeter, as casual players, I think you and I have both been really enjoying where Perimeter is at right now.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy to go in there with a sponsored kit or relatively low level gear and take on things like the Warden, take on things like the Commander that drops down, and actually walk away with some pretty good stuff, as well as getting your contract completed. PvP has felt really fun on Perimeter as well, where like I don't feel like I'm being completely overmatched by people. It's usually I don't think I've ever seen a purple kit on Perimeter. At least in season 2. So at a solo run, I load in tunnels. So I've been going to South Relay pretty much anytime I land in tunnels because they've got storage drives. I'm trying to collect those for leveling up Sekaguchi, I think. So I head right to South Relay pretty quickly. And as I get through, I see, I'm looting things. Very, very quiet, not hearing anything. And I pick up a lockbox key. I'm like, oh, cool. I saw that there was the, smoke when I came into South Relay for the lockbox keys. Like, I'll go hit one of those right now. There's a lockbox room. For those who aren't familiar, there's a room where it's got red flares going off the top. And there are these decently leveled up loot boxes in the room where there's like 6 different ones. Some of them might have, up to like purple tier gear in them. Most of them are greens and blues, but,
Yeah,
they
some
can
of them
be
have crap. Those are the ones I always open. But then there's usually
Right.
1 or 2 nice ones that I don't open those.
Exactly. So I head over there, and again, I don't even think exfils have landed in. Like, we're very, very early into the map, and I get into the room. Every single loot box is open. Like, someone has already been here and looted every single box. Like, I don't even know how that would happen unless they specifically, landed in with the intention of like,
Saving them
I've
up,
got these
coming with a
loot
purple bag.
keys. Yeah, I'm going to get everything.
Kind of weird.
Just as I enter that room and hear that and see that happen, I hear footsteps. I'm playing Recon, and I have my Recon ping ready to go. I set that off. and the guy is right in front of me. He's crouching, and he has a sneaking backpack that I think like he just activated, so it wasn't quite on the signal jammer yet, so he was fully picked up as a player on my ping. And I think he was hiding between some boxes, but I don't think he was expecting anyone to come from the loot room where he just was. And it's over in a couple seconds, right? Like I just get the drop on him with a machine gun, take him out. I go in and like he's so loaded up. Like he's got this blue sneak backpack. He's got tons of blue weapons, all this stuff. So like already this has been the most like successful run I've had. I head back over to in Overflow where the commander has dropped because I'm like, okay, I'm geared up. Like I can absolutely take this fight. I pass by another dead body of a runner as I go by there. So I'm like, okay, I know there's 2 runners off the map already. And as I'm making my way to Overflow, I start hearing exfils go off. So 2 more exfils go off. So I'm like, okay, I think I'm pretty much like in an empty map at this point in time. Like maybe there's 1 or 2 other players. I do the fight, those are fun fights, but they can be hard fights. Like I use all the heals that I took off of this guy, and he had some really good heals. I get that stuff, and it included like some purple mods that I could put on my weapons. So I'm like getting out of there now with 2 purple weapons. As I'm doing the fight, I hear another exfil go off. So I'm like, yeah, I think this is an empty map, but it's 7 minutes left, and I can either exfil right away. There's an exfil at Overflow, or I can go try to attack the warden. But I had such a good bag at that point in time. I was like so successful that I was like, I don't know if it actually makes sense for me to try to take that warden fight. Like in the event that there is another player and they get the drop on me the same way I got the drop on the other guy, I don't know if I can risk all that good stuff. But of course, I go ahead, I exfil. And, when you exfil, they'll show you any players left on the map. And the map was totally empty. So I could have had, like, the most amazing perimeter run of my entire marathon career. But instead, I had to settle for just, like, an extremely excellent
Or the
run,
warden could have just,
good.
like, killed you playing solo using guns with, like, mods that you were unfamiliar with. I think you made the right call.
Yeah. That's probably fair.
I think the ability for this game to generate these kinds of stories is one of the most amazing things about it. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about kind of like the progression of this game from Season 1 into Season 2, and just talking about a few different aspects of the game and kind of like how it has evolved in its limited time of existence with us. Did you want to take us away on that?
Yeah, I think it'd be good to just kind of level set, with us as the sort of, casual to hardcore marathon players, we probably spend a lot of time playing perimeter in Dire Marsh with then maybe, if Duos is on Outpost, we'll do Outpost. And then we've had a couple runs in Cryo over the first 2 seasons, but I certainly haven't touched Cryo at all in Season 2. We have 1 successful exfil that we did, I think on like the last day of Wipe or like second to last day of Wipe on Season 1, which felt really good. I typically play Recon or Triage, and then maybe switch it up with like Destroyer or Sentinel, which is one of the new shells. And I think you do mostly the same as well, right?
Yeah, it really depends. I used to play a lot of Vandal and Destroyer, but it's kind of like, especially playing duos, it feels hard unless you're going up against something in particular to compete with the utility of the Recon Triage combo. That's been pretty consistently our most effective combo, I think.
Yeah, and going along with that, the weapons that we've had experience with. I mean, I know that the Mizraya shotgun, for example, is supposed to be like one of the best guns in
Man,
the
I couldn't
game.
figure out how to use that thing at all.
I've never gotten one. I don't. I never even tried it.
They
So
need. I mean, this is one thing I do think legitimately sucks about this game, and this is a problem I always had with Battlefield, and Battlefield has come up with various ways to solve it. The Battlefield version being like, I'm not going to get in a helicopter or an airplane in this like big multiplayer match and like take away somebody else's opportunity to get in the helicopter airplane and then just like crash it or get shot down
right,
because I'm inexperienced with it. I need a way to train on this stuff. And it does suck to pick up a Mizria or whatever for the first time and you're like, okay, I know this is powerful, but like I can test it, I guess, on some robots or whatever and know that I'm going to make noise and lure other runners over, or I can just try and take it straight against another runner. And sometimes you don't have a choice, right? And it's just like if you don't even know whether you're supposed to pull the trigger or hold down the trigger or how that works, I think that's a real weak point with this game. I think they don't even need a single player, bots only mode, although, that'd be cool and something like that is coming. But like they just need a straight up firing range. I don't even need to walk around. I just want to be able to pull out a gun and fire it at a target and see how the recoil works and how the spread control works and all that kind of stuff. And it's just like kind of sucks that your first time using any gun, you're probably going to blow it because you have to figure out how that gun works and reloads and all that. But anyway.
right, yeah, and so I think it's an interesting sort of take on where things are in Marathon to be like, for everything I hear in the discourse, people seem to have completely different experiences. Every one of the 9,000 people actually playing this game seem to have a different idea of like what the game needs to change, what's the big main problem. And I think part of that is just based on, where you are in your season progress, what you've been able to do, how your individual lobbies are going based on your level and your matchmaking and things like that. Something that I've heard a lot in the switch over from season 1 to season 2. Maybe I should just take a second to do a little bit of an overview of the updates of what happened in season 2. So season 2 introduced a new version of the Dire Marsh map called Night Marsh, which is really, really cool. They did a ton of like awesome sound design stuff to make the map really creepy and you get close to the anomaly and like it sounds like maybe you're hearing players like whispering in your ear like, hey runner, or something like that. Like they've really done a lot to make the vibe really creepy. The darkness sometimes adds this like incredible new element to the actual like map design and level design itself, where like if you can hide in certain shadows, like you are pretty much invisible, so it adds all these new ambush points and things like that. And then they also added a new area of the map called Complex Control, I think, where essentially it's like a little mini raid mechanic room where you go in, you have to do, various things where you hit some switches, you fight a boss at the end, and then you can get a loot room with some really, really good stuff. Again, as where we are as casual players, I've never even attempted it. I don't know if you have, Ty.
No, definitely not.
Yeah. Going alongside of that, they also released their first attempt at a sort of, PvP light mode, although really my understanding is that it was functionally just a PvE mode called Sponsored Survival, where essentially you had a little bit of a shorter time. You were going in on sponsored kits, so you weren't able to bring in your really good stuff. And the only people you would encounter were rooks. Rooks, for people who aren't playing Marathon, are essentially this version of solo player where you load into the maps where people are playing in duos or trios, but you're just a single player. You load in with a free kit, but usually it's a pretty beefed up free kit based on all of your various upgrades you've gotten throughout the year. So the idea, again, for this Sponsored Survival was you're mostly fighting robots, but then again, these rooks might pop in to give you a little bit of a PvP element. Most of the time it's going to be 3-on-1, unless maybe some rooks find each other and team up. But again, as far as I could tell, that almost never worked. I tried to play as a rook one time, and I never encountered any players. Like, I went to the final exfil, and they just weren't there. So I don't really think that mode ever worked as a PvP light mode, but it was something that, they at least tried with the start of Season 2. Because they released Sponsored Survival on Nightmarsh, as the very first map that had it on, what that did was, like, very hardcore players had this thing that was challenging but very, very rewarding and relatively safe for them to just grind and grind and grind to get really good gear. So a lot of times what you'll hear in the discourse around Season 2 is like, hey, the loot economy is all messed up. People have tons of gold weapons, tons of, gold shields, like, all of this really top tier stuff. And like, that's really messing things up for casual players. In my experience, that hasn't been the case at all. Like, as a casual player, I'm not encountering any of these people. Like, I've been able to make good progress. They also introduced something called the Cradle in Season 2, where you could dismantle your gear in order to level up the various stats across all of your runner shells, which was a neat new touch. And I've never really felt an issue, again, as a casual player in Season 2, with where the progression's at, with who I've been match made with. Again, sticking to the more casual zones, but for me, I think overall Season 2 has been pretty good, and I'm not experiencing those same sort of, disparities that some people might be having, or at least what they might be having according to the discourse.
Yeah, I feel like some of it is definitely just like FOMO, and I felt this way with Destiny a lot too, where people would like chase, gear and god rolls and exotics and stuff like that, even if there's not really a place to ever use it. And like I've talked about this before, but just like the chase becomes the thing. And I really think like people were complaining like, oh, there's these people that can run these activities, and like they also gave away like higher level sponsored kits based on your level in Season 1. And there was like this concern that like, oh, you're like taking the players who already did well in Season 1 and you're like starting them on too high of a tier, and because it's like cyclical and better gear enables you to, succeed more and survive more and earn better and better gear, that it was going to be this like vicious cycle. And like, I don't know, it's just really hard for me to believe that like people at the beginning of the season were like constantly, trying to obtain a bunch of like biomass and were getting jumped by like purple and gold shield guys. I think it's more just like, I mean, gamers are so like spoiled, there's just not another word for it, and they're so primed to feel like entitled to every part of every experience. And I don't know, it just really rang more as people, it bothered people more that someone else was getting like a free thing or was accumulating gear that they weren't accumulating than anything else. Like I just, like you said, there's this like chasm between our lived experience in the game and what everyone is like talking about being the problems in the game. And like, I don't know, I don't know what to chalk that up to, but I personally was a little like underwhelmed by the night stuff. It's dark in spots, but there's like too many lights in the game. Like, I thought you were really not going to be able to see, like when you go down under like AI uplink and there's those tunnels and you legitimately cannot see in front of your face unless you turn your flashlight on. I thought the whole thing was going to be a lot more like that, and like a lot more of this risk reward of like flashlight, vector weaponry, vector grenades, and visibility. And it's just, occasionally it is, but I find myself way more often just having pretty normal firefights in areas where there's like floodlights or whatever. So I don't know, it's been interesting to see just another example where I think Nightmarsh was really super positively received by most of the community, and I was like, this is cool. It is a nice creepy vibe, but I actually don't really enjoy playing on it very much.
Yeah, and I think there's always going to be that challenge, and I'll be very curious. So their next big release that they have is something called Vault Breakers. This is going to be a purely PvE mode where it's almost like like a roguelite or something, like Hades, where you're doing these runs, hopefully you're exfilling, maybe you're dying, and it's a self-contained progress system where you have a kit that you're bringing in that you'll slowly build up over the course of runs, with the
And you
idea
know what this
being
means? We
that,
get some new currency. We're gonna get like Vault Breaker cores or shards or something.
yeah, ascendant vaults, ascendant DNA. So what's really cool about this, though, is that it is going to give people the opportunity to play the Cryo Archive map. Personally, I'm really looking forward to this. I think this could be cool. We'll see what the community says. Again, yeah, I think it could be a coin toss whether people love it, whether people hate it. But I do think that could be a good approach, because again, as I've said, Cryo Archive is this sort of pinnacle map or whatever, and we haven't played it a ton, and I don't know if that's purely just because like we don't have enough gear for it. But also, I do think there's just a hurdle of sort of like learning the various mechanics. It does have these sort of raid-like puzzle elements that you might find in something like Destiny. So I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to try that out and maybe get a little bit more experience. And maybe that'll help us, once again, try to take on Cryo towards the end of Season 2.
Real quick about Vault Breaker 2, I mean, hopefully it comes out soon. We should be getting towards the midpoint of the season, and we can talk about it in more depth. But I am so eager for this as a way to onboard new people who are interested in the game but are turned off by, like the PvP or hardcore, and just don't know where to start. It's one thing to be like, hey, like I can, we'll shepherd you and we'll play on perimeter. It's another thing to be like, hey, we'll shepherd you and we'll play on this survival mode, but it's all dark and all the mechanics are like slightly different than the normal game, right? Like with the survival thing. And yes, Cryo is also going to be different like mechanics than the normal game, but it really feels like a much better way to be like, hey, person who maybe like played the intro or played a couple runs and then fell off or has been intrigued by the game but kind of turned off by some of the narrative of how hardcore it is. Drop into our running crew. There'll be 3 of us. We're just going to go through, kill these bots. Like, we've got clear objectives. Like, we're solving puzzles together. Like, I just feel like that's going to be a great opportunity to, like, pull some new players in. I don't think it's going to be this revolution in player count, but I'm really excited for that opportunity to hopefully, like, pull some people into the game with Vault Breaker.
Yeah, and that should be coming out in, I think, about 2 weeks. I think they said the 21st is when that's coming out. So we'll keep you all posted on that. Probably not on our next session, but the one after it. Yeah, I think, again, we don't have high goals for, what we want to accomplish. Again, I think we're both, pretty resistant to that FOMO feeling that we've been talking about. But Vault Breaker is definitely something I think we're going to give a pretty hard shot at over the next couple of weeks. T Money, I know you've got a fairly hard out today, so I figure we can wrap things up. I think next week, you have any thoughts on what we're going to be taking a look at?
I think next week it would be fun to take a look at the lore in Marathon. I think we've both been really interested in the way that they've drip-fed that to us. So I think there's just like a ton to discover there. The lore of this game itself, how it connects back to the original Marathon, how this method of storytelling connects back, or maybe doesn't, to Destiny and the way that game was developed. So I think we'll take a deep dive into all the things that got humanity to Tau Ceti 4, and then all the things that seem to have killed all the humanity on Tau Ceti 4.
Nice, yeah. And as always, we do have a little donation link to a Patreon if you want to throw us a couple bucks to support this project. Thank you so much for listening to the end. If you've made it this far, please go ahead and give us a like if you're on YouTube, or rate us on 5 stars on Spotify. If you can take a couple of minutes to do that, we would really appreciate that. And then we also have an email address in the show notes if you want to reach out for any content suggestions, feedback, things like that. We would really appreciate that. You can find Ty as a panelist on Discovery Debrief. That's a Star Trek podcast, and we hope to see you all very soon on Tau Ceti Forerunners.